I didn't grow up in the mountains. That matters. People who did grow up there know there are certain things you don't do, and they know them the same way people in other places know not to touch a hot stove. It isn't always written down. Nobody hands you a list. You just learn it from the way older people go quiet when certain subjects come up, or from the way a front porch conversation can turn cold in one sentence. You don't go into the woods at night unless you have to. You don't answer a voice calling your name from the tree line unless you can see exactly who it is. And you don't whistle after dark. I didn't know any of that when I moved to Black Ridge. My wife, Erin, had inherited the cabin from her mother's side of the family, though cabin made it sound more charming than it was. It sat on the far side of an old mountain road in western North Carolina, where the pavement narrowed so much in places that two trucks meeting head-on had to negotiate like diplomats. The place had belonged to Erin's great-uncle Wade, who had died the winter before at 83 years old. No kids, no close family left up there, just a stubborn old house on 5 acres of sloped land and woods thick enough to block the sky. We were 32, burned out from the city, and stupid in the way people get when they think a new zip code can save them. I'd been laid off from my job in commercial printing 3 months earlier. Erin worked remote for an insurance company and could do it from anywhere with a decent signal. We'd been fighting more than usual. Money, mostly. Stress. The kind of sharp little arguments that leave a residue in the air even after both people apologize. So when the probate paperwork cleared and the cabin officially became hers, moving up there felt less like a choice and more like a chance to start over, without admitting that's what we were doing. The first time we drove up the ridge, I remember thinking the place looked beautiful in the same way old cemeteries can look beautiful. The land rolled in folds of green, one mountain stacked behind another until everything turned blue-gray in the distance. There were rhododendron tunnels, black tree trunks, steep creek beds cut through stone, and patches of fog hanging in low places like smoke that had forgotten where it came from. The cabin sat back from the road behind a sagging fence and a gravel pull-off half-eaten by weeds. It was a squat, 2-story structure with a rusted metal roof, a deep front porch, and windows so old the glass warped reflections when you moved. There was no visible neighbor in either direction, just road, ridge, and woods. Erin stepped out, looked at it, and said, "It's creepy." But she smiled when she said it. I wish we turned around then. The locals were friendly in the way mountain people sometimes are with outsiders. Polite, helpful, but measured. You could feel them deciding how much of themselves to give you. The nearest town was 15 minutes downhill. 1 gas station, a Dollar General, 2 churches, a hardware store, a diner, and a post office that looked like it had been built from leftover parts of other buildings. Everybody seemed to know who we were within the first week. "You're Wade's kin," they'd say to Erin, even though she barely remembered the man. Or they'd say, "Y'all are in the place up on Black Ridge." Always Black Ridge. Said the same way every time. Not dramatic, not spooky, just a name with a little extra weight in it. The warning came on our 4th day there. We were in the gas station buying coffee and work gloves when the woman at the counter asked how we were settling in. She was probably late 60s, with a face like crumpled paper and the alert eyes of somebody who missed very little. "Fine so far," I said. "Quiet." She gave me a look that I didn't understand then. "Quiet's not always the same as peaceful," she said. Erin laughed politely. "We're figuring that out." The woman rang us up, then leaned her elbows on the counter and looked at Erin, not me. "You're Miss Joanne's granddaughter, ain't you?" Erin nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The woman's expression shifted at that. Not softer exactly, but more personal. "She ever tell you the ridge has rules?" Erin glanced at me, then back at her. "No." "Well," the woman straightened the bag of gloves like she was deciding whether to continue. "Best to learn some now, then. Don't go wandering in the woods after sundown. Don't leave food scraps sitting out. And if you hear somebody call from the trees, make sure you see who it is before you answer." I smirked a little because I thought she was half joking. "What happens if you answer?" She looked at me, and that tiny trace of humor died in my throat. "You might get an answer back," she said. Then she handed us the bag. As we walked out, Erin muttered, "That was unsettling." I said, "It's mountain superstition. Every place has its thing. That should tell you the kind of man I was. Not cruel, not reckless on purpose. Just the sort who always believed there was a reasonable explanation for anything, and who thought fear was usually a sign that somebody wasn't thinking clearly enough." I had no framework for a place like Black Ridge. For the first week, things were normal enough. We cleaned. We hauled old furniture out to the porch. We found mice nests in the pantry, a cracked wash basin upstairs, and coffee tins full of nails, buttons, and yellowed receipts from the 1970s. Erin worked during the day at the kitchen table while I patched screens, cut back brush, and tried to make the place feel less abandoned. At night, we sat on the porch and listened to the woods. The insects were so loud after dark they almost formed a wall of sound. Every once in a while, something moved out there. Deer maybe, or raccoons. But nothing felt wrong. Not then. On the 8th night, the power went out. A storm had been threatening since late afternoon. By dusk, the sky had gone greenish-black in that ugly summer way, and the wind started rushing through the trees in long, uneven breaths. Around 9, the lights flickered twice and died. Erin cursed softly from the living room. I found the flashlight in one of the kitchen drawers and handed her a lantern. Rain had started hammering the roof hard enough to make conversation feel close and private, like we were sealed inside a drum. I remember thinking the outage almost felt cozy. We lit candles. We opened a bottle of cheap red wine. I made a joke about living off-grid and becoming mountain people. At some point, Erin went upstairs to grab a blanket. I was standing by the front window, looking out at the black yard, when I heard it. A whistle, 3 notes, clear, human, not loud, not far either. It came from the woods behind the house. I turned, smiling, because I assumed Erin was messing with me from the staircase, but she was still upstairs. I could hear her moving around in the bedroom above me. Then, because I was an idiot, I whistled the same 3 notes back, just casually. Almost without thinking. The kind of absent-minded thing you do when somebody outside a store whistles at you and you answer before realizing you know them. The sound that came back was the same tune. Exactly the same, only slower and farther out. I felt my stomach drop. Erin came down the stairs and saw my face. I kept looking at the window. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Before I could answer, the whistle came again. 3 notes. From the tree line this time, much closer. Erin froze. The blanket slipped a little in her hands. We both stood there listening to the rain hit the roof and the porch steps and the leaves. Then, from somewhere beyond the yard, something moved. Not a full shape, just a darker dark between the trees, shifting behind the rain. Erin whispered, "Shut the curtains." I did. That was our first real night on Black Ridge. Neither of us slept much. We told ourselves it had to be a person, some local kid, somebody messing with the new couple from out of town. The whistle had been too precise, too deliberate, human. That should have comforted me. It didn't. The next morning, I went outside with a coffee mug in one hand and my phone in the other, planning to look for footprints and maybe take a picture if somebody had been hanging around. The ground was soaked and soft. There were prints all right, but they didn't make sense. They started near the back edge of the yard and moved in a loose half-circle around the house. Bare feet, or something shaped like bare feet. Long, narrow impressions with splayed toes and deep pressure at the front, as if whatever made them had leaned forward as it walked. They came close to the back porch, then stopped beneath the living room window. There were no return tracks. I wish I were inventing that. I stood there too long, coffee turning cold in my hand, trying to force a rational answer onto something that refused to fit one. Mudslides, partial prints. Maybe rain had washed some away. Erin came out and saw them. We didn't talk for a minute. Then she said, very quietly, "We should ask somebody." So we drove into town. At the hardware store, there was an older man named Glenn who had known Wade. He was lean as fence wire, with nicotine yellow fingertips, and a hearing aid that whistled faintly every so often when he turned his head. When we mentioned the prints and the whistle, his expression hardened in a way I'll never forget. "Who whistled first?" he asked. Neither of us answered right away. Then I said, "I did, back at it." He shut his mouth, looked at the floor for a second, and exhaled through his nose. "Well," he said, "don't do that again." I forced a laugh. "So what is it then? Some prank?" Glenn looked up. "Did it sound close when you answered?" "Yes, and farther off when it first whistled." I nodded. He scratched his jaw. "Then it wasn't calling to you, it was checking distance." I felt something cold move through my chest. Aaron said, "What does that mean?" He didn't answer directly. Mountain people sometimes won't tell you a thing head on, especially if they think saying it plain gives it shape. Instead, he said, "Wade knew better. Your grandmama knew better too." "Better than what?" Aaron asked. "Than to answer things from the woods after dark." He looked at me then, not angry exactly, but disappointed. "Some sounds ain't for you." I remember getting irritated, because fear tends to turn into anger when a man doesn't want to feel small. "So what are we supposed to do?" I said. "Just live like it's 1850 and pretend the woods are haunted?" Glenn didn't blink. "I'd live careful," he said. "That night we locked every door and window before sunset. It sounds foolish now to say we thought that would help, but people always go back to house logic when something unsettles them. Shut the door, close the blinds, turn on lights, create boundaries, pretend wood and glass mean something." Around 10, the dogs started. Not ours, we didn't have any. These were down the ridge somewhere, first one, then 3 or 4 all barking at once, hard and ugly. It went on for maybe a minute before cutting off mid-burst like somebody had thrown a switch. Then came the whistle, not from deep in the woods this time, from the side yard. Same 3 notes. Aaron grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. "Do not answer that." I wasn't planning to. The whistle came again, then a pause. Then, to my horror, something tapped the side of the house. Not on a window, on the wood siding itself. 3 soft knocks, a little lower than a person's shoulder height. We sat in total silence. Another knock. This one under the kitchen window. Then movement across the porch roof. Not footsteps exactly, more like careful pressure. Something shifting its weight where nothing should have been standing. I picked up the fireplace poker. I don't know why. Instinct maybe? The stupid male need to have something in your hand when you're terrified. Aaron whispered, "Call somebody." I looked at my phone. No signal. The landline in the kitchen had been dead since we moved in. Then the whistle came from the back hall, inside the house. That was when Aaron started crying. We tore through every room downstairs, then upstairs, lights on, poker in my hand, both of us shaking so badly we kept bumping into door frames. Nothing. No open window. No broken latch. No person crouched in a closet. Nothing but the sound of the old floorboards and our own breathing. We ended up sitting on the bedroom floor until sunrise, with the dresser pushed against the door like people in a cheap motel during a storm. The next day, Aaron wanted to leave. Not forever yet, just for a while. Go down to a hotel in town, reset, think. I should have agreed. Instead, I heard myself say, "If we leave because of some local nonsense, we'll never come back." She stared at me, red-eyed and exhausted. "You heard it inside the house. So did you." "Yes," she snapped, "which is why I want to go. I wish I could tell you I listened. I didn't." Pride has a way of making cowards act brave when all they're really doing is refusing to adapt. We compromise the way unhappy couples do. We stayed one more night. That afternoon, I walked the property with a can of bear spray and a hatchet I'd found in the shed. I checked every window, every crawl space opening, every corner under the porch. Near the back line of the yard, where the grass gave up and the woods began, I found something hanging from a low branch. A bundle of little twigs tied together with faded red thread. Not random, intentional. A marker, a warning, or maybe a boundary. As I stood there, I became aware of how quiet the woods were. No wind, no insects, just stillness. Then, from somewhere uphill, I heard my wife's voice say my name. "Matt?" I turned immediately toward the sound. It had come from the woods. The real Aaron was still inside the cabin. I could hear music faintly from the kitchen window where she'd been cleaning, but the voice in the trees had been hers. Not close to hers. Hers. "Matt?" Same tone she used when asking me to bring her something from another room. Everything in my body went cold. Then, farther to the left, maybe 30 yards deeper in, her voice said it again. I backed up so fast I almost fell. When I got inside, Erin took one look at me and said, "What happened?" I told her. She didn't question me, didn't even try to rationalize it. She just sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs and whispered, "It knows us now." I don't know if that was true. I only know that after that day, the sounds changed. Until then, it had been whistles and taps and movement outside. Things you could maybe, if you were desperate enough, pretend had simple causes. After that, it started using voices. The third night was the worst. We didn't mean to still be there. A storm had rolled through late afternoon. The road washed out lower on the ridge, and Glenn from the hardware store had called from town. He'd gotten our number from the gas station somehow, to say there'd been a small slide near the bridge, and we weren't going anywhere until morning. "Keep the doors barred," he told Erin, "and don't answer nothing." That was all. By dusk, the fog had come in thick enough to swallow the yard. The porch light shone into it like a flashlight pressed against dirty cotton. We'd packed most of our bags and set them by the front door, intending to leave at first light. The house felt wrong before full dark. Not haunted in the dramatic movie sense, just subtly out of joint. Rooms seemed longer, corners seemed dimmer than they should. The old photographs on the downstairs hallway wall, weighed in relatives we didn't know, looked somehow more watchful in the shifting lamplight. At 8:47, someone knocked on the front door. 3 hard raps. We both jumped. Then came Glenn's voice from the porch. "It's me," he called. "Road's clear now. Open up." Relief hit so fast, it almost hurt. I started toward the door before Erin grabbed my wrist. She was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. The voice came again. "Matt, open up." Same rough tone, same local drawl. Glenn, exactly. But we could both see, through the warped glass beside the door, that there was no truck in the drive. No headlights, no shape on the porch, just fog. Then something stepped onto the porch boards. I heard the wood groan under the weight. Not heavy, deliberate. One step, then another. Then a slow drag across the boards, like whatever it was had a foot that didn't lift quite right. Erin whispered, "Back away from the door." So we did. The voice tried once more. This time it was my mother. I hadn't heard her voice in 6 years. She died of a stroke when I was 26. But there it was on the porch, sweet and strained, exactly as I remembered it from hospital rooms and childhood phone calls. "Baby," she said through the door, "let me in." I think something broke in me at that moment. Not sanity exactly, something more basic. The certainty that the world runs on understandable rules. Erin covered her mouth with both hands. Tears were running down her face. Then the doorknob turned, not wildly, not like somebody trying to force it, just a slow, testing twist. Once, twice. Then from the back of the house, near the kitchen, came the whistle. 3 notes. The same 3 notes I'd answered on that first stormy night. It was moving around us, or maybe there was more than one. We fled upstairs. No strategy, no dignity, just blind panic. In the bedroom, we shoved the dresser against the door again and crouched on the floor while the whole house seemed to listen to itself. Every creak felt intentional. Every settling noise had purpose. Somewhere below us, a board popped in the hallway. Then footsteps. Actual footsteps this time. Slow, unhurried, one stair at a time. I stared at the bedroom door, not breathing. The steps reached the landing and stopped right outside. Then came a knock. Soft, gentle, 3 times. And Erin's own voice said, from the other side of the door, "Matt, open up." She was gripping my arm so tightly I knew she heard it too. The voice repeated, a little more urgently, "Matt." Then a different voice. An old man's, maybe Wade's, though I'd only heard old recordings of him once, "Boy." Then the whistle again, right outside the bedroom door now. Not loud, almost playful. I don't know how long it stayed there, minutes or hours. Time behaves differently when terror gets deep enough. At some point I realized dawn light was beginning to thin the edges of the curtains. Birdsong returned in hesitant bursts from somewhere down the ridge. The sound stopped all at once. Not faded, stopped. We waited another half hour before moving the dresser. The hall outside was empty. At the top stair, scratched into the dust of the old floorboards, was a single line made by something sharp. You called back. We left within 20 minutes. Didn't shower, didn't pack properly. Just grabbed the bags we prepared and drove down that mountain with the sunrise barely touching the tops of the trees. When we reached town, Erin was shaking so hard she couldn't hold her coffee. Glenn took one look at us and didn't ask for details. "Y'all ain't going back," he said. It wasn't a question. Erin said, "No." He nodded once. "Good." I asked him then, because I had to, "What is it?" Glenn looked out the diner window toward the ridgeline, blue in the distance. My granddaddy used to say there are things in these mountains that learn people the way people learn trails. They hear enough of you, they get a shape for you, a voice, a step, a way of standing in a doorway. He paused. Old folks used to tell children not to whistle after dark because it carries too far, carries you with it. That doesn't explain anything. No, he said, it doesn't. We rented a place 2 counties over for 6 weeks while Erin figured out what to do with the property. She sold the cabin cheap to a timber company through an attorney. We never went back for the rest of our things. Furniture, photos, boxes of books, Wade's tools. Left all of it. I didn't care. Erin didn't either. For a while, I thought that would be the end of it. Then the calls started. Not often. Once every few months at first. Always from blocked numbers. I'd answer and hear nothing for a second but static. Then 3 clear notes whistle softly into the line. I changed my number. It happened again a year later on the new one. Sometimes I hear it other places too. A grocery store parking lot after dark. A motel balcony in Tennessee. Once from the wooded edge of a rest stop off I-40 while I was standing by a vending machine with a stale cup of coffee in my hand. 3 notes. Not loud, never loud. Just enough to let me know distance is being checked. Erin doesn't like talking about any of it. We're still together, somehow. Maybe because after you go through something like that, regular problems stop feeling as important. Or maybe because we're the only 2 people in the world who will fully believe each other about that house, that ridge, that door. She told me once that her grandmother had called a few weeks after we left. The old woman was in assisted living by then, and not always clear-minded. But that day she was lucid enough to ask one question. "Did one of y'all whistle back?" Erin said yes. Her grandmother closed her eyes and started crying. Apparently, Wade's brother had vanished in 1959 after doing the same thing while walking home from a hunting camp. Heard whistling in the trees, whistled back, laughed about it. 3 nights later, he disappeared from his bed while the rest of the family slept in the same house. They found the bedroom door open, muddy bare footprints on the porch, and no sign of him again. The family stopped talking about it because mountain families are good at surviving around absences. They build routines over them. They rename fear as memory and move forward. Nobody told us because nobody imagined we'd stay up there long enough for it to matter. Or maybe they figured the ridge would mind its own business if we minded ours. Sometimes I still dream about that porch, about fog pressing against the glass, about hearing my mother's voice outside a door she could not possibly be standing behind. And every now and then, usually when I'm tired or alone too late, I think about the line scratched into the floor upstairs. You called back. That's the part that stays with me, more than the voices, more than the whistling, because it suggests something I still don't know how to live with. It wasn't random. It wasn't hunting in the ordinary sense. It heard me answer, and from that moment on, it understood there was a path between us, a connection, a door. I used to think the old warnings people repeat in mountain towns were just folklore, a way of dressing up ordinary dangers so kids would listen. Don't go into the woods after dark. Don't follow cries from the holler. Don't answer something you can't see. Now I think those warnings exist because somebody, at some point, learned them the hard way and survived just long enough to pass them on. And if you've never lived in the Appalachians, if you've never stood on a porch at night with miles of dark timber in front of you and no city glow anywhere on the horizon, then maybe it's hard to understand how alive those woods can feel. Not in a magical way, in a watchful way. Like there is a world there that overlaps yours just enough to hear you when you make noise. So believe me or don't. Call it stress, isolation, shared panic. Some local drifter with a talent for mimicry. I've tried those explanations myself. I wore them out. But if you ever find yourself on a mountain road after sunset, and somebody tells you not to whistle into the trees, just listen to them. Don't test it. Don't laugh. And whatever you do, if something out there sends the same tune back slower than you played it, don't answer twice. This is Horror Story Society, and you made it to the end. If you felt that chill, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.